Having conversations with people that differ in opinion is really where growth lies. It opens your mind to new possibilities and ideas. And I think closing out people that disagree with us is unfortunately what's happening in our country and in the world. But it's the complete opposite of what we should be doing. We should be active listening and having compassion and empathy for what other people think. And that means that you don't have to agree with them. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the show. Thanks so much for tuning in and spending this time with me today. We've got a topic that I think applies not just to business, but to life. And sometimes on these solo topics, I like to deviate off of just all heavy business and investing topics. I just think that these are certain things that apply to us no matter how we are living our lives or in what aspect of life. So today's topic is about mindful communication. And I've got some stats and some data, so I'm actually going to be reading a good bit. If you are watching, if you're listening, you're not going to know the difference, which I love. But let's go ahead and dive into a fundamental topic that really applies to every area of our lives, and that's communication. Communication is so much more than just the words that we say. It's really how we say them. It's how we listen, and it's how we understand one another. And I've done through probably the last 20 years of life, I've done a lot of learning about communication, about dialectics, about just in general, how to soft start conversations, how to have better negotiations. And I thought, why not share some of that on the show? Because I think it's really important. You know, our lives are so multidimensional, and we can be successful in business, but have really bankrupt personal lives, marriages, relationships. So I think it's important that we talk about more of just how to become a holistic entrepreneur. How do we become successful in all areas of life and really develop a rich life as opposed to just being successful in one vertical of life? And so I want to just share about mindful communication. You know, in today's fast-paced world, we are so distracted. Our attention spans are shorter than ever, and there is more and more research being done about how we are connected to our phones and to social media, and how it is damaging younger generations that don't even know how to interact or live without them, and really haven't developed communication skills because they're able to just absorb information or consume information. They're typing on a keyboard or texting, messaging, and they're not communicating direct face-to-face with people. So I think it's a really important topic about how to be present, how to be attentive, how to be intentional in our interactions of communication. There was a study done in 2019 by Carnegie Institute that said 85% of our success in business and in life comes from our communication and relationship building. And if you think about it, like how many conflicts could be avoided, how many deals and negotiations could be done, how many relationships could be strengthened if we all knew how to communicate and understand our feelings and the feelings of the other person that we're trying to communicate with. And so I want to break down just a few fundamentals today. Number one is active listening. This is something, again, we're not taught in school. Nobody is teaching us. Most families don't even understand how to communicate this to us. So it's definitely something that most of us probably haven't learned unless you're a communications major. But it's not just about the words somebody is saying. It's really about engaging with someone when you are actively listening. It's about verbal and nonverbal communication, right? I think there's a stat that says the words that you say, I think it's less than 10% actually mean anything to the listener, that it's more about the tone of your voice, it's your body language, right? Like I can say, well, I don't really care about that, or I don't really care about that. I said the exact same things, but just that different inflection, the way that I tilted my head, the way my eyes looked, all of that means something different because the intent is different. So when you're mindful in your communication, this might be eye contact or nodding in acknowledgement, paraphrasing what someone says to understand. And one of the probably most powerful things I've learned, and I think this was in one of the counselors that I've worked with over the years, one of the therapists that I worked with, was when you are actively listening to someone and you say that you understand, it's not meaning that you agree with them. It's that you're hearing and understanding what they're saying. And I think so often we're afraid when someone, especially in a conflict situation, is sharing something with us, that we're afraid to just be like, I understand. But understanding doesn't mean agreement. And I think oftentimes people don't want you to solve their problems. Typically, they just want to be heard. And so often we can avoid conflicts in our communication if we just seek to be understood, to be heard, and not necessarily to be agreed with or have our opinions validated. I don't know about you, but if you ever gone to lunch or coffee with someone and you're sitting there and they're on their phone, or they check their phone all the time, like how does that feel when you're engaging with someone and the whole time they're having a conversation, they're looking at their phone or they're checking their phone? Kind of means that they're disinterested in what you're saying, right? So we have to watch how our body language is speaking volumes far more than maybe what we're thinking or even saying in the moment. So when you're in active listening mode, it's about turning your phone off, putting it upside down, not going after that impulse of checking what's going on and really being present in the moment. It's also empathy. That's another critical component of mindful communication. It's really putting yourself in someone else's shoes to understand their perspective. Again, this isn't necessarily to agree with what they're saying. It's just to understand their position and their perspective on it so that you can respond with compassion. And, interestingly enough, I think if the world today would do this more, we wouldn't have the division that we have in our country or in our world. Oftentimes people are just so focused on sharing their opinions and they're not actively listening to the other person. They're not being present to really think, why do you think that way? That's why I love to have conversations with people that I don't agree with. You will learn far more from someone that disagrees with you than you ever will being in an echo chamber. Having conversations with people that differ in opinion is really where growth lies. It opens your mind to new possibilities and ideas. And I think closing out people that disagree with us is unfortunately what's happening in our country and in the world. But it's the complete opposite of what we should be doing. We should be active listening and having compassion and empathy for what other people think. And that means that you don't have to agree with them. Now, I want to go into some practical tips, right? We've got strategy and tactics. Strategy is the thing. Tactics is how to do the thing. So let's talk about a few. The first is to just practice mindfulness in your daily interactions. According to this other study at the Harvard Business Review, teams with high levels of mindfulness exhibit better communication and collaboration, which has resulted in increased productivity and profitability in their businesses. And I know everybody would love that. Secondly, is to create self-awareness. Pay attention to your communication style. Understand how it's perceived by others. And I want to give you one little trick that if you were ever in a conversation, you're communicating with someone and something triggers you and you feel either off-put or angered or bitter or resentful, whatever the emotion is, I want you to empower yourself to pause. Having a moment to pause, to just explain that you're going to remove yourself from the situation, that you are not going to engage or react, is so powerful to end conflict, right? It's like if we were holding an invisible rope right now, and you had one end and I had one end, and you are yanking and yanking and yanking on that rope. If I am not yanking back and I just choose to put the rope down and walk away, there isn't any strife. And so I think so often we fail to recognize in those moments that you can choose to have emotional control and walk away. And that is also a way of displaying empathy and compassion for the other person that you're communicating with. So pay attention to your communication style. Pay attention to what's going on in your body and be okay to walk away or remove yourself from those situations if you need to. In personal relationships, being mindful also allows us to be present. It gives us the ability to listen to needs and concerns without passing our own judgment. Gives us the ability to respond with kindness and compassion and really deepens our relational bond with others. Now, in the business world, practicing mindfulness and communication really can have a deep impact on your team, the dynamic of your organization, the productivity and overall success in your company. Because when we approach interactions with colleagues or clients or partners, we really create an environment where everyone feels valued, heard, and respected. And that is the number one thing employees want. When we did a study, I want to think it was maybe 10 years ago, I'm going back, and we looked at the study of what were the big drivers that created employee retention. Was it monetary? Was it schedule? Was it title? What were all of the levers that really created a cult-like culture in your team? And the number one driver was recognition. It goes back to what I was saying earlier, that so often people have not been recognized. They have not felt seen in their lives. They maybe were trying to try too hard in order for a parent to recognize them when they were a child. And so they bring that into the workplace, into adulthood, into their adult interactions. And so the number one driver of being able to keep cult-like culture of employees in your team was recognition. And so when you are able to have mindful communication with your team, more thoughtful, more collaborative communication, it really provides better outcomes, not just for your team, but for you and ultimately your business. One tip that I can give you that probably took me far too long to learn is, and this was business and personally, quite honestly, it's that if you really focus on what the other person is saying, and you don't jump to conclusions about what you think they're trying to say, and you actively listen more, like they always say, 2 ears, 1 mouth. If you listen more, your communication style will naturally progress because people will feel seen, heard, and recognized around you. If you listen only to seek to understand and not to give your opinion, you will have far better communication and better relationships with the people around you. Here are a few ways that you can keep your composure and communicate more effectively. First is if you're ever feeling like you're at a loss for words or you're not sure what to say, don't hesitate to ask for clarification. This could just be something like, I heard that, but can you repeat it so I can understand better? Saying that will really make the person that is talking feel like you really genuinely want to hear what they're saying and that you are seeking for clarification and understanding. So, can you repeat that? Or could you clarify that question? Those are open-ended questions that continues to invoke dialogue. Number 2, another trick is if you're ever feeling overwhelmed by what someone is saying, or you need a moment to gather your thoughts, it is perfectly acceptable for you to ask for some time. Saying something like, can you give me a moment and I can get back to you on that? Making sure that you align expectations with when you can respond to something and empowering yourself to take time if you need to is only going to deepen the interaction and the relationship that you have with that person. And studies have shown that businesses with strong communication practices are 50% more likely to have lower employee turnover rates and 20% more likely to have higher levels of profitability. That's from a Gallup survey. So focusing on communication is not only going to foster a better environment within your organization, it's going to enhance collaboration, and it's also going to be an incredible tool for conflict resolution when they come up, because you know they always do. The International Association of Business Communicators, I didn't even know that was a thing, says that 85% of employees report experiencing workplace conflict at some point in their careers and highlights the importance of effective conflict resolution skills. So if we put these in just a few simple principles, principle 1, remain calm. Calmness is really going to set the tone for the conversation. And when we feel calm, other people feel safe and they can really explore the way they're feeling and they can really share, which is going to foster an open communication line. The second is clarity. Remember that confusion is the enemy of effective communication. So strive to be clear, concise, and direct when you're talking. Nobody wants to play a guessing game or decipher cryptic messages. So avoid beating around the bush or using any jargon. Be clear, but also number 3, be kind. Genuinely show care and empathy towards the person that you're communicating with to build trust and to deepen that stronger relationship. And then last is consistency. Having consistent communication will build credibility and leave a lasting impression. So be concise, be curious, get straight to the point, and be confident and complete in your communication. Remember that what you have to say matters and what somebody else has to say matters too. So speak with confidence and ensure that all necessary information is understood in the dialogue to avoid any misunderstandings. Okay, guys, I hope you found today's episode on communication valuable. If you did, share it with someone on your team, in your organization, or in your life. And for more episodes like this, please subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you tune in. And until next time, I'm Candy Valentino, and I am cheering you on every step of the way. We'll see you next week.